Pay for buying my own place after my husband charged rent on day 3 of marriage? My name is Claire. I married Derek exactly 72 hours ago. The ceremony was perfect, an intimate wedding at an estate in the Massachusetts countryside. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. He was an elegant finance executive with a smile that promised security. I was a graphic designer who was, according to him, down to earth. We met at an art exhibition in Boston's South End. He spoke with such confidence about the world, his travels, his investments. He made me feel protected, admired. After a year, he proposed to me in the rain at the Boston Public Garden. He said he wanted to build a solid life, a team. I believed him. Now, sitting at the table in our luxurious dining room in his Back Bay apartment, I feel that team crumbling before we have even started to play. Claire, honey, you have to look at it from a practical point of view, Derek says, pouring himself another glass of Cabernet. It is our 3rd night. There are still specks of confetti in one of my purses. I am looking at it, I reply, keeping my hands still on the linen tablecloth. But what I see is my husband asking me for $2,000 a month to sleep in what he calls our marital bed. He sighs as if I were a slow student. It is not for sleeping, it is for contributing. This apartment is not cheap. The mortgage, the condo fees, the taxes. Life in this neighborhood has a cost. I want you to feel like a real part of this, with the responsibilities that come with it. The day before yesterday you vowed for richer, for poorer. I remind him, staring at him intently. You did not mention for monthly payments. It is not rent, he exclaims, gently rapping his fist on the table. Then he composes himself, adopting his negotiator's tone. It is a fair contribution. It fosters your independence within the marriage. I do not want a dependent wife, Claire. I want a partner. A partner who pays you, I mumble, looking at my plate. The rack of lamb now tastes like ash. Look, he says, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. It has always been done this way in my family. My grandfather did it with my grandmother, my father with my mother. The woman contributes to the household one way or another. It is tradition. A healthy tradition, it provides balance. A knot of anger tightens in my stomach. Your mother did not work outside the home, Derek. She took care of everything. I have my own job, my own projects. I will come home tired, and on top of that, I will have to pay you for the privilege. Precisely, he insists, as if he has just won the argument. Because you have your own money. It would be unfair for me to carry the whole burden. Equity, Claire, that is the key word. Responsibility will make you feel more like you own this space. I already feel like I own this space. I say, although it is a lie. I have never felt like I owned anything here. It is his world with his expensive furniture, his abstract paintings I do not understand, his relentless order. I feel like your wife, or so I thought. He stands and walks to the window, hands in the pockets of his silk trousers. Things cost money, Claire. That is how the world works. I have worked hard to have this. Now you are a part of it. It is only natural that you contribute to maintaining it. And what do you contribute? I ask, unable to hold back. Beyond the mortgage you already had before you met me. He turns, surprised by my tone. I provide the security, the roof, the status. This apartment, this zip code, they open doors for both of us. When we go to events, when we bring over important clients or friends, all of this is an investment. Our investment. $2,000 a month is the rent for an entire apartment in good areas of Boston, Derek. It is not a contribution, it is sustenance. Exactly, he says, as if I have finally understood. You are sustaining our standard of living. Our future. Think about the children when we have them. The best private schools are here. This is for us, Claire. For our future. The future. He says it with such conviction that for a second I doubt myself. Am I the one who does not get it? Is this normal in some circles? But then I look into his eyes. There is no warmth in them. There is calculation. There is the cold assessment of an accountant. I need time, I say, finally getting up. I cannot be in this room anymore. I cannot give you an answer right now. Of course, he concedes with a magnanimity that makes my blood boil. Take the weekend. But Claire, he pauses, his voice turning soft, almost a poisoned caress. Do not let pride cloud your judgment. This is what is best for both of us, for our union. Trust me. I nod without saying a word and head up the stairs to the bedroom. Our bedroom. The enormous bed with Egyptian cotton sheets. I sit on the edge, my hands trembling. 3 days, just 3 days of marriage. The bridal bouquet has not even fully wilted, and he is already presenting me with the bill. I remember something my mother told me the night before the wedding. Be careful, sweetheart. Very charming men sometimes hide very long tabs. I had laughed. I thought it was the cynicism of a woman who had raised 3 children on her own. Now it does not seem so funny. I go to the window. The street is quiet, lit by the neighborhood's old-fashioned streetlights. Directly across is a light stone building with wrought iron balconies. It is identical to this one, perhaps a little older. On the 3rd floor, the windows are dark. A small secret smile forms on my lips. Equity, you say, Derek? I whisper to myself. Responsibility, you say. I gently open my nightstand drawer. Between tissues and a book, my fingers find a cold key ring. It has 2 new keys and a small metal tag with an address. The address of the building across the street. 3rd floor. Door on the right. I clench it in my fist. The inheritance from my Aunt Lillian, the independent spinster who always told me that a property in your name is worth more than 10 promising husbands. Nobody knew, not even my family, to avoid envy, and certainly not Derek with his speeches about merging assets. I had simply smiled and said the inheritance was modest, enough for a small investment. I had used that money and my savings to secretly buy and renovate that apartment. It was my whim, my security, a place just for me. I never thought I would need to use it so soon. My phone rings. It is a message from Megan, my childhood friend, a successful lawyer and my confidant. How is the honeymoon at home? Has he taught you his revolutionary method for loading the dishwasher yet? I reply quickly, my fingers nimble. Something like that. I need to see you tomorrow. Urgent. He brought out the calculator, didn't he? The response is immediate. Oh my God. Seriously. Coffee tomorrow at 10 at the usual spot. Tell me everything. I put the phone on silent. Downstairs, I hear Derek put on classical music in the living room. Vivaldi. He likes to think he has refined taste. I look at myself in the wardrobe mirror. I am Claire Bennett. For 3 days, I have been Claire Bennett Thompson. Now, looking at the reflection of a woman with eyes too wide and a steely determination beginning to form in their depths, I know that the Thompson has its days numbered. All right, Derek. I murmur to my reflection. Let us talk about equity. Let us talk about responsibility. But we are going to talk with my rules holding these new keys. The game starts tomorrow, and he does not even know he is sitting at the table. The morning of the 4th day dawned cold and clear. I went down to the kitchen where Derek already was, impeccable in his white shirt and his air of owning the world. It smelled of fresh coffee and toast. Good morning, wife, he said with a smile that tried to be affectionate but only managed to be possessive. He gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Did you sleep well? Have you thought about our conversation? I have thought a lot, I replied, pouring myself some coffee. I kept my voice neutral, weary. Honestly, I am surprised, Derek. It was not what I expected. He sighed like a teacher with a diligent but slow student. Real life is often surprising, honey. Marriage is not just pretty pictures and romantic dinners. It is logistics, it is home economics, it is tradition. There it was again, the magic word. Tradition. He played it like an ace up his sleeve. What tradition exactly? I asked, tilting my head. Because my parents split all expenses 50-50, and so did my grandparents. I do not remember my grandmother paying my grandfather rent. Every family is different, he said with a wave of his hand meant to end the topic. In mine, the man provides the roof, the structure. The woman contributes to the daily sustenance. It is a balance that has worked for generations. It gives the woman dignity, makes her a participant. By paying, I insisted softly. By contributing, he corrected with a hint of impatience. Look, Claire, I do not want to fight. Let me explain it another way. He came closer, placing his hands over mine on the marble table. Do you know what the mortgage on this apartment is? I shook my head. $5,000 a month, he said, lowering his voice as if revealing a state secret. $5,000. And then there are taxes, condo fees, insurance. It goes over $6,000. And that is not counting living expenses, electricity, water, food, the car. I let my eyes widen a little, feigning a shock I no longer felt. That is a lot of money. It is, he nodded gravely. And business has not been bad lately, but it has its fluctuations. The market is volatile. Your contribution would give me a cushion, Claire. It would give us one. It would be a tremendous help. We would be more secure. There it was. The naked truth behind the rhetoric of tradition and equity. Fluctuations. Cushion. My money as a buffer for his risks. Do not you have savings? I asked innocently. Of course I have savings, he defended, letting go of my hands. But you do not touch those. They are for investments, for opportunities, or for real emergencies. This is the normal running of a household. And a household is supported by two people. He got up and went to the window with his statesmanlike pose. I am not asking you to carry the whole load, just a fair share. $2,000 is less than a third of the fixed expenses. It is more than reasonable. And with your salary? With my salary? I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Well, I know roughly what you earn as a senior designer, he said, shrugging as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Your company is well known, and you have those freelance gigs. You must clear around $4,000 a month, right? Maybe $4,500. $2,000 is perfectly manageable. You would even have money left over for your little indulgences. A chill ran down my spine. It was not just the request. It was the precision with which he had calculated my ability to pay. Had he investigated me, or had he cleverly extracted information from me during our months of dating? I remembered his casual questions about my work, my clients, if they paid on time. So you have been calculating my finances, I said, my voice sounding colder than I intended. No, it is not that, he said quickly, turning around. It is just family planning. When you get married, you talk about these things, you plan them. I did not want to overwhelm you before the wedding with all the preparations, but now we are a team, and teams share information. A team. He, the captain who decides the strategy, I, the player who finances the game. And what if I do not earn that much some months? I asked, looking at my coffee. Freelance work is unstable. His smile tightened by a millimeter. Well, that would be a problem, Claire. That is why you have to be responsible. Tighten your belt if you must. But with your talent, I do not think that will happen. And you could always look for more clients. Try a little harder. Try a little harder. The words echoed in the silence of the designer kitchen. To pay for the life he had chosen. I understand, I said at last, letting out a sigh that feigned resignation. It is a lot to digest, but I see your point. Responsibility, equity. His expression brightened. He saw the surrender in my eyes. He came over and put an arm around my shoulders. I knew it. I knew you were smart. Practical. Not like those women who only think about rights and not obligations. This will make us stronger, you will see. The smell of his expensive cologne made me nauseous. Of course, I murmured, gently slipping from his embrace to take my cup to the sink. Stronger. So we start in March? He asked, his practical tone returning. The first payment we can do it in cash if you like. More discreet, no bank paperwork. I will give you a receipt, of course. Everything in order. Of course. A receipt. What a gentleman. Cash is fine, I nodded, looking out the window. The building across the street caught my eye. On the third floor, the sun's reflection on a window flickered like a wink. Excellent, he exclaimed, rubbing his hands together. He looked like a CEO who had just closed a profitable deal. You will see, you will not regret it. This is the real beginning of our life together. He came over and kissed my forehead. I have a meeting. A work lunch. Do not wait up for me. Do something nice with your friends. Spend some of that money you will have left over. And with that, he walked out of the kitchen, whistling. I heard the front door slam shut. Silence fell over the luxurious apartment like a tombstone. I left the cup in the sink. My hands were not shaking. They were cold and steady. I went to the living room to my purse and took out my phone. I had a notification from my bank. The scheduled transfer for the maintenance fee for my real apartment, had gone through. $120, not $2,000. I dialed a number. Yes. A professional female voice answered on the other end. It is me, I said. I need to activate the home insurance for the apartment across the street. The full package with liability coverage. And have the locks on the main door changed today. A master key just for me. Of course, Ms. Bennett, the voice said. Any incidents? No, just a precaution, I replied. And one more thing, put an access authorization in the system for a Megan Harper. I will text you her ID number. Done. The locksmiths will be there in 2 hours. I hung up. I walked to the large living room window. From here, the view of the building across the street was perfect. My building. My home. Derek wanted to talk about tradition. Fine. In my family, the tradition was that the women were shrewd, that we knew how to keep an ace up our sleeve, and that when a man underestimated us, we taught him a lesson he would never forget. His was a tradition of accounts and domination, mine of silence and strategy. And the game had just begun. I smiled for the first time in days. A real smile. Equity, Derek, I whispered to the window. You are about to see just how perfect equity can be. The neighborhood cafe was filled with the afternoon hum. It smelled of freshly ground coffee and warm pastries. At a table in the back by the window, Megan was already waiting for me. Seeing me walk in, her worried expression transformed into a tight smile. We hugged. God, you look like you have seen a ghost, she said as I sat down. Worse. I have seen my husband's calculator, I replied, dropping my purse on the empty chair. A waiter came over and I ordered a black coffee. I needed clarity. Tell me, Megan ordered, leaning over the table. Her gaze was that of the lawyer she was, sharp and ready for battle. I told her everything without sugarcoating. The $2,000. The excuse of tradition. The veiled confession of his financial fluctuations. His precise calculation of my income. The requirement of cash payment. The words, try a little harder. Megan did not interrupt. Her face grew darker with each sentence. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, letting out a long sigh. He is a real piece of work, she said with a calmness that was more terrifying than a shout. A cheap, miserable guy who should be in ads for how not to treat your wife. 3 days. He only lasted 3 days before handing you the bill. It seems he is in a hurry, I said bitterly. He needs my money to maintain the theater, the car, the suits, the lunches at the country club. The facade is crumbling. Megan shook her head, disbelief and rage battling in her eyes. And what are you going to do? You cannot give in, Claire. That is the gateway to a difficult situation. First the payment, then your whole salary. Then he will ask you to co-sign his debts. I am not giving in, I interrupted her. My voice was firm, firmer than I felt. I took a sip of the coffee they had just brought. It burned, but the pain was an anchor. I am leaving. Megan blinked. Leaving? To a hotel? Your parents' house? That would give him the upper hand. He would throw it in your face that you do not have a penny to your name. I am going to my house, I said, and with a slight nod, I gestured towards the window in the general direction of the neighborhood. To the one across the street, to be exact. Across from where we are living now. My friend's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? What house? Aunt Lillian's apartment, I explained, lowering my voice. The one I inherited last year after she passed, before I even met Derek. Megan remembered. She had been at the service. She knew my eccentric spinster aunt had left me something, but I never gave her the details. It was a promise I made to Lillian on her deathbed. The apartment in the South End? She asked, confused. No, I sold that one, I said with a half smile. I used that money plus my savings to buy another one. More central, more strategic. Claire, Megan whispered, a mix of admiration and surprise in her voice. Strategic. I looked around, making sure no one was listening. I bought an apartment in the same neighborhood on the same street. In fact, across from his, with a direct view into his living room. Megan let out a stifled laugh, covering her mouth with her hand. Are you kidding me? Across the street? And he does not know. Nobody knows, I whispered. Not my family, not my friends, and certainly not Derek. Aunt Lillian's inheritance was more significant than I let on, and I have always been good at saving. The apartment had been on the market for months. I saw it, I knew it was the place. I bought it anonymously through a management company. I renovated it in secret little by little. It is furnished. Ready. Oh my God, Megan breathed, her eyes shining with the thrill of the secret. You magnificent strategist. And why? Just in case. Just in case, I nodded. Aunt Lillian always said your own home, even if it is small. You never know when you will need to escape a situation that turns unsafe. I thought she was being dramatic. Until the day before yesterday. Megan squeezed my hand across the table. Well done. Well done, Claire. So what is the plan? The plan is to leave, I said simply. But not just any old way. I want to do it so he cannot touch me legally or in any other way. And I want to see his face. I love that part, Megan smiled, regaining her professional composure. Let us get down to the details. First, the prenuptial agreement. We signed one, I said. He insisted on it to protect each of our assets. I agreed because I had nothing in my name, or so he thought. My savings were in a separate account. The apartment is in a company's name. Everything I have is from before the marriage. Perfect, Megan nodded. That is a fortress. What is his, what is yours. And what you acquire afterward in principle is also yours unless it can be proven you used marital assets. But if you bought the apartment before with prior funds, it is solely yours. And the deeds, the papers, are in a safe deposit box in my name. He has no access. Smart. I need a copy of everything to have it ready. And the new apartment, is it directly in your name? It is in the name of the company, Bennett Holdings LLC, I said. A single-member company I created last year. He has no idea it exists. Megan looked at me with renewed respect. Aunt Lillian taught you well. Okay, so the divorce will be quick and clean. Irreconcilable differences, separate residences. With the prenup, there is no argument over assets. Next, how are you leaving? I have the key, I said. I can come and go as I please. I have been bringing things over little by little these past few days. Clothes, books, my old laptop, things he would not miss right away. But I need to get the rest. Documents, my parents' photo album, some jewelry. And when is the big day? Megan asked, taking out her planner. Saturday morning, I said. He has a tennis match at 9. He is usually out until at least noon. That gives me 3 hours. Good timing, Megan calculated. I can be there on the street with the car just in case to help you load or if he comes back early. Thanks, I said, and the gratitude came from deep within. But I do not want to involve you too much. It is my problem. Your problem is my problem, she said definitively. Besides, I am your lawyer. It is my job. Does he have any extra keys to where you are living now? I mean, no, just the keys to his apartment. He never gave me copies of mine. I get it now. But I do not need them either. I am not going back. Good. Change the locks on your new place today if you have not already, and activate the alarm system. Just in case he tries something. Already done, I said. This morning, while he was at his work meeting, Megan smiled proudly. Thinking of everything. And emotionally, how are you? The question took me by surprise. I had been avoiding it. I am angry. And relieved. And a little scared. But more than anything, I am fed up. Fed up with being taken for a fool. Fed up with the calculations and the fake traditions. Anger is good, Megan said. It gives you energy. Fear is normal too. But the relief, that is what matters. It means you already knew deep down that this was a broken situation. She did not finish. She did not have to. She was right. From the first time Derek had criticized my work as a well-paid hobby, or when he had commented on how practical my single friends were, small cuts I had ignored. The relief was knowing I would not have to ignore them anymore. And what happens after? Megan asked, her voice softer. After the great escape. I said simply. I live in my home, work on my projects, rebuild myself without someone putting a price tag on me. And the divorce, she reminded me. We will file immediately. We will send the papers to his office. Hopefully, he will be as cowardly legally as he is emotionally, and will not put up a fight. She paid the bill before I could. My contribution to Operation Freedom, she said, smiling. We walked out onto the back Bay Street. The afternoon was cool. I instinctively looked toward the building across the way, toward Derek's apartment. The living room windows were dark. There, I whispered, discreetly pointing to the light stone building directly opposite. Third floor. The windows with the blinds halfway down. Megan looked, whistling softly. It is beautiful. And the location is ironic beyond belief. You can see his place from your living room. I do not want to spy on him, I said, though a part of me knew that was a lie. I just want to make sure he stays on his side of the street. My phone vibrated. A message from Derek. Honey, the meeting is running long. I will have dinner out with some clients. Do not wait up. Have you thought more about our arrangement? Hugs. Love you. Megan read the message over my shoulder. Hugs. Love you. And pay me $2,000. Exactly, I said, putting the phone away without replying. His love you now sounded like a bargaining chip. Are you going to answer? She asked. No, I said. I will let him think I am mulling over my defeat, that I am resigning myself to it. Megan gave me a tight hug. I will be there on Saturday at 8:30 sharp, in the car on your new street. Call me if anything happens before then. Thanks, Megan. For everything. Do not mention it. That is what friends are for. To cheer you on and to help you move forward. She walked away with her determined stride. I stayed on the sidewalk a moment longer looking at my building. My building. The half-drawn blinds were a symbol of my parallel life, a life Derek did not suspect. I smiled. It was a smile that was not forced. It was the smile of a strategist who sees victory within her grasp. Saturday. Just 2 days. 2 days of acting, of smiling, of feigning submission. I could endure it because on the other side of the stage, freedom was waiting for me with open doors. I crossed the street, and instead of turning toward Derek's entrance, I stopped in front of the one across from it. I took out my key ring, inserted the key into the lock. The cylinder turned with a satisfying click. I went inside. The lobby was empty and silent. It smelled of recent cleaning and fresh paint. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. I opened the door to my home. The afternoon light streamed through the large windows, illuminating the gleaming hardwood floor. It was empty, yes, but it was full of peace, of possibilities. Of me. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it. The silence was absolute. And it was mine. Equity, Derek? I whispered into the empty air. This is equity. The following days were a masterpiece of acting. I became the wife Derek wanted to see. Docile, considerate, concerned about our financial future. Derek, honey, I have been reviewing my accounts. I told him one evening while he was watching the financial news. I approached the sofa with a look of concentration. That $2,000, I think I can manage it. Maybe I can start paying you next month. What did you say? He lowered the TV volume and looked at me, a slow smile of triumph spreading across his face. Seriously, Claire? That is sensible. Very sensible. I knew reason would guide you in the end. It is only fair, I murmured, sitting beside him, my hands clasped in my lap. Like you said, it is a contribution to the household, to the team. Exactly, he said, patting my knee. His touch felt repulsive. This will make us stronger. A modern marriage with shared responsibilities. I nodded, smiling weakly. I just need a little time to reorganize my payments. For the 1st of March. Okay. Perfect, he exclaimed. He seemed euphoric. The financial pressure he must have been feeling was visibly easing. The 1st of March. A symbolic day. We start a new month, a new phase. From that moment his attitude changed. He became more expansive, more confident. He spoke with greater authority about his decisions. I have been thinking, Claire, we should change the car this year. With your stable contribution, we can afford better financing. Sounds good, I said while peeling potatoes in the kitchen. My mind was on the mental checklist I was keeping. Books from the study, blue wool jacket, diplomas from the bottom drawer. And maybe a vacation in the summer. Cape Cod. What do you think? At a nice resort, of course. Of course, I repeated mechanically. He did not notice the lack of enthusiasm in my voice. He was too busy enjoying his imaginary victory. He told me about 5-year plans, private schools for children that did not yet exist, a possible balcony extension, all financed in part by my contribution. While I was acting. The next morning after he left for work, I got ready in workout clothes. A large duffel bag hung from my shoulder. To the gym? He had asked as he saw me, taking a sip of his coffee. Intensive yoga class, I had replied, adjusting a headband. I need to release some tension to better face this new phase. Good idea, he had approved. A healthy mind in a healthy body and in healthy finances. I left the building, but instead of turning toward the gym, I crossed the street. My steps echoed in the empty entrance of my building. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The key turned smoothly. Inside, the silence greeted me like an old friend. I dropped the bag on the floor of the empty living room. I unzipped it. I took out 3 pairs of shoes, a pair of jeans, and several rolled-up t-shirts. It was not much, but each trip was another thread cut from the fabric that tied me to Derek. I took the things to the bedroom. I had bought an IKEA wardrobe, still in its flat-pack box. I did not have time to assemble it, so I left the clothes in a corner, on a clean sheet spread on the floor. My little freedom camp. The ritual repeated every day. Some days it was books, others it was kitchen utensils I liked, the ones he despised for being of mediocre design. My Italian coffee maker. The set of mugs Megan gave me. Small things but mine. One evening I took a risk. Derek had a business dinner. I knew he would be back late. I returned to his apartment, I no longer thought of it as ours, and opened the drawer of his desk in the study. There they were. In a blue folder, our copy of the prenuptial agreement, the marriage certificate, my passport, and other documents he had kept there for safekeeping. I took them all. I also found, with a knot in my stomach, a printed spreadsheet. In the income column, next to his salary, was a row that read, Contribution C $2,000 per month. My name reduced to an economic abbreviation. I took that too. It was evidence. Everything went into a folder that I hid under the clothes in my duffel bag. That night, when Derek returned smelling of wine and cigars, I was in bed, pretending to be asleep. Claire, he murmured from the doorway. I made a sleepy sound. Good night, honey, he whispered and turned away. The next day, Friday. The tension was palpable. It was the eve. Derek was in a good mood, talking about his tennis match on Saturday morning. I am playing with Kyle. He is a shark, but I will beat him. Then we can have lunch together. Celebrate your first step toward our new economy. I would love that, I lied. But I have plans with Megan in the morning. Maybe in the afternoon. Ah, Megan, he said with a hint of disdain. The single lawyer. Do not let her fill your head with ideas, huh? I will not, I said, smiling inwardly. If only he knew. That afternoon during my yoga class, I met Megan at my new apartment. She brought a bag with sandwiches and 2 cans of soda. Final strategy meeting, she announced, plopping down on the living room floor. I sat across from her. We had no furniture yet. All set, I told her. I have taken out almost everything important. All that is left are the big suitcases with the winter clothes and a few other things. And my grandmother's painting. And him? Any suspicion? None. He is euphoric. Today he was looking at new car catalogs. Megan rolled her eyes. Unbelievable. The height of arrogance. Well, better for us. Tomorrow's schedule. He leaves at 8:30. I will be here on the street at 8:45 with the car. You need to have the suitcases out at the entrance of his building by then. If everything is quiet, we will load them quickly and you will come with me here. If we see something is up, I will come over and pretend I was picking you up for breakfast. Okay, I nodded. My heart was beating faster just thinking about it. Have you changed the locks here? Yes. And the intercom is registered only with my voice and yours as a guest. Perfect, Megan said, taking a bite of her sandwich. And emotionally? Impatient, I confessed. I want it to be tomorrow already. I want to see his face. And at the same time, I feel a little afraid of the unknown. That is normal, she said with an understanding smile. But the fear of the unknown is better than the terror of the known. Living with someone who turned a partnership into a transaction. By this time tomorrow, you will be here drinking champagne with me and laughing about all this. I imagined it. The scene gave me strength. One more thing, Megan said seriously. When you leave, do not argue. Do not get into long explanations. Say what you have to say clear and cold and leave. Do not give him a chance to reply. Surprise is your best weapon. I know. I am going to my house across the street. Goodbye. Something like that. Exactly. No drama. You are the one in control. When Megan left, I stayed in my apartment a while longer. I walked through the empty rooms. In the bedroom, the small pile of my belongings was growing. In the kitchen, there was only a coffee maker and 2 cups. In the living room, nothing except the folder with my important documents. I looked out the window. In the apartment across the street, the lights in Derek's living room were on. I saw him walk by, talking on the phone, gesticulating. He was living his life, oblivious to the earthquake preparing to shake his foundations. I took out my phone. I had a message from my mother. Everything okay, honey? I miss you. Your father is asking when you are coming to visit. I took a deep breath. Soon I would have to tell them everything, but not until I was safe. Behind my own walls. I replied, everything is fine, Mom. We will see you soon. Love you. It was the last night. I returned to Derek's apartment for dinner. He had ordered sushi. A little celebration in advance, he said, toasting with sake. To our future, I said, raising my glass. The future he imagined and the real future collided silently over the marble table. To our future, he repeated with satisfaction. And to my sensible, practical wife. I smiled. I drank. The sake tasted like goodbye. That night, as he snored softly beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I mentally went over every step of the plan. The suitcases hidden in the hallway closet. The keys in my purse. The message to Megan scheduled to send at 8:30 in the morning. It begins. There was no turning back. And I did not want one. The first ray of Saturday's light began to creep through the blinds. It was the morning of my freedom. I closed my eyes not to sleep, but to savor the last moments of waiting. The final game was about to begin. On Saturday morning, the dawn light filtering through the blinds found me already awake. I had slept little and poorly, not from nervousness, but from an electric anticipation. I spent every hour of the night mentally reviewing the list, the plan, the words I would say. At 6 o'clock, I silenced the alarm before it could sound. I slid out of bed. Derek was sleeping with his back to me, snoring softly. The sight of his broad, confident back gave me another jolt of determination. He was dreaming of new cars and private schools. I was dreaming of silence and doors only I could open. Dressed in comfortable clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers, I went down to the kitchen in silence. I made coffee not for him but for the routine to make everything seem normal if he woke up. The sound of the coffee maker seemed deafening in the apartment's silence. As it dripped, I went to the hallway closet where, behind some blankets, I had hidden the 2 large suitcases and a gym bag. I had been filling them throughout the week with the heaviest items. Coats, boots, my work folders, more books. I dragged them one by one to the front door. They did not make much noise on the thick carpet. Every click of a suitcase latch, every scrape of a wheel, sounded like a thunderclap to me. I would stop listening, only hearing the steady snoring from the bedroom. It was 6:45. I looked out the entryway window. On the empty street at this hour, I saw Megan's car park right in front of my new building's entrance. A small beacon of safety. I sent the pre-written message. I am here. All set. Her reply was instant. I am outside. On your signal. At 7:10 I tiptoed upstairs. I needed one last thing from the bedroom. I opened my nightstand with infinite slowness. There, in a small jewelry box, were the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me and my wedding ring. I put on the earrings. I left the ring in the jewelry box, now empty of everything that mattered. I did not want it. He could keep it as a souvenir of his failed marriage. I was turning to leave when a hoarse voice made me freeze. Claire? What are you doing? Derek was half sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes. My heart leaped against my ribs, but I remained calm. Nothing, honey. I woke up early. I am going to make you breakfast before you leave for tennis, I said in the calmest voice I could muster. He grunted, satisfied. You are an angel. Strong coffee, please. He fell back onto the pillow, turning his back to me. I held my breath until his breathing became regular again. That was not in the script. Now I had to go down and pretend to make breakfast. I could not risk him getting up and seeing the suitcases. I went down to the kitchen, made coffee, toast, juice, all with automatic movements. I set the table for one. At 7:20, I heard his heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. He was dressed in his tennis clothes, immaculate white. Smells good, he said, yawning. He sat down and started devouring the toast. I stood, leaning against the counter, my hands trembling slightly. Now, because of the tension. You sure you do not want me to give you a ride? He asked between bites. The club is not far. No, do not worry about it. Megan is coming to pick me up. We are going to have breakfast, I lied. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Okay, he said without looking at me. He was focused on his phone, checking emails. Then suddenly he looked up. Today is the big day, huh? Tomorrow is March 1st. Our new beginning. Yes, I said, looking him directly in the eye for the first time that morning. A new beginning. He interpreted my fixed gaze as excitement. He smiled, satisfied. Do not worry about the money. You will see how everything flows better from now on. Shared responsibility is greater. It is good for both of us. I nodded without saying anything. He finished his coffee in one gulp. Well, I am off. I do not want to be late. Kyla's a competitive. He stood up, came over to me and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. His skin smelled of cologne and sleep. See you later, princess. Have fun with Megan. And do not let her sour you with her stories of independent women. I will not, I whispered. I watched him grab his keys from the ceramic bowl, open the door and leave. He did not look toward the entryway, where the suitcases were half hidden behind a tall Chinese vase. The door closed behind him with a click. I waited. I counted to 100. Then I ran to the kitchen window that overlooked the street. I saw him leave the building, get into his BMW and drive off. The car disappeared around the corner. Now, I texted Megan. Now. In less than a minute, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Megan was there in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. All good. He did not notice anything, she asked, coming in. He woke up, but he did not see anything. He's gone now. We have time. Megan looked at the suitcases and whistled softly. Wow, you did not mess around. Let us hurry. We each took a suitcase in the bag. We went down in the elevator, fearing it would stop on another floor. It did not. In the lobby, we quickly went out to the deserted Saturday morning street. It was cold, but the sun was beginning to warm things up. We crossed the street 10 meters that felt like a chasm. With every step I felt lighter. We reached the entrance of my building. I inserted the key. The door opened. We went in. We carried the suitcases up the stairs. The elevator was too loud. On the third floor, panting a little, I opened the door to my home. Megan dropped the suitcase on the floor of the empty living room and hugged me tightly. You did it. You are out. I am not completely out, I said, gently pulling away. I still have to tell him. He has to know I am not coming back. Now? She asked, concerned. Now, I nodded. Before he gets back from tennis, before he can try to find an explanation or create a drama. I want him to know, and I want him to know that I am here. Safe. Out of his reach. Megan nodded in understanding. Do you want me to go with you? No. This is something I have to do alone. But stay here just in case. I went down the stairs again, my heart pounding, but not with fear, with a pure liberating energy. I crossed the street again. I entered the building that was no longer my home. I went up to the apartment. Everything was as I had left it. The breakfast dishes in the sink, the coffee maker still warm. I went to the living room. I sat on the sofa facing the window that looked out onto my new apartment. There in the window across the street, I saw Megan's silhouette appear and give me a thumbs up. I took a deep breath. I took out my phone. I had several notifications from Instagram, from a group chat with friends. Nothing from Derek. Not yet. Time passed slowly. An hour, then another. At 10:30 I heard the key in the lock. The door opened. Derek came in, his tennis bag over his shoulder, his face sweaty and smiling. I won. That guy Kyle does not know. He stopped short when he saw me sitting on the sofa, without the TV on, without a book, just sitting. Claire? What is wrong? Did not you go out with Megan? Megan already left, I said, keeping my voice calm and clear. And I am leaving too, Derek. He blinked as if he had not processed the words. His smile vanished. What? You are leaving? Where? To your parents for a few days? Look, if it is about the money, we can talk. It is not about the money, I interrupted, standing up. It is about everything. I am going to my house. Your house? He repeated with an incredulous laugh. Claire, this is your house. No, this is your house, I corrected, gesturing around us. And I was going to pay you rent for the privilege of living in it. Well, I was going to. But I have found better accommodations. His confusion was turning into irritation. What the heck are you talking about? Are you sick? Did Megan put something in your head? I am healthier than ever, I said, walking toward the entryway where my purse still was. He followed me. Claire, this is not funny. Stop talking in riddles and tell me what is wrong. You got upset about the $2,000. I already told you we could negotiate. I do not want to negotiate, I said, picking up my purse. I turned to face him. He was standing in the middle of the hallway in his white sportswear, suddenly looking smaller, more vulnerable. What I want is to leave. For good. No, he shouted, and the sound was shrill in the apartment's silence. You cannot do this. We are husband and wife. We have been married for 4 days. This is insane. What was insane was thinking you could buy me, I said with a coldness I did not know I possessed. What was insane was asking me for money for your mortgage on the 3rd day of our marriage. What was insane was calculating my income and deciding my fee. That is what is insane, Derek. I am just leaving an unhealthy situation. I give you all of this, he yelled, opening his arms in a dramatic gesture. This apartment, this life. And you repay me with this ingratitude. I do not owe you anything, I retorted. And I do not want any of this. The only thing I want is to be in my home. And where is this home? In your hometown? In some shabby little apartment on the outskirts? He spat contemptuously. I smiled. It was the smile I had been practicing in my head. A wide, genuine smile, full of a peace that infuriated him even more. No, Derek. It is much closer. I took a step toward the door. It is right across the street. The stone building. 3rd floor. I bought it months ago. With my money. I watched as understanding fell over him like a slab of concrete. His face turned pale. His eyes widened, and then they drifted involuntarily to the living room window, to the building across the street. No, that is not possible, he stammered. It is a sick joke. It is not a joke, I said, opening the door. The fresh air from the landing came in. It is my new address. No need to write. My mailbox is already full. Claire, wait, he pleaded, and his voice broke. The anger gave way to panic. We can fix this. Forget the money. Forget everything. Please. Goodbye, Derek, I said, stepping out onto the landing. Good luck with your tennis. I closed the door. I did not slam it. I closed it with a soft but final click. I heard a muffled cry, a thud against the wood from inside. Then silence. I went down the stairs for the last time. I did not run. I walked with a steady pace. I went out to the street. The morning sun hit my face. On the other side of the street, in my window, Megan was waving at me, smiling. I crossed without looking back. I entered my building, went up to my apartment. When I opened the door, the silence enveloped me. A silence that was all mine. Megan hugged me. What did he say? What they always say in these cases, I replied, letting out a sigh I had been holding for weeks. That it was crazy that we could fix it. The usual. And I told him the address. I said, and a nervous, liberating laugh rose in my throat. And I told him goodbye. I looked out the window. In the apartment across the street in our old living room, I saw Derek's figure motionless looking this way. I could not see his expression, but his slumped, defeated posture said it all. Megan followed my gaze. He looks like a ghost. He is, I said, turning away from the window. The ghost of a mistake I am not going to make anymore. My phone rang. The screen showed Derek's name. I looked at it for a moment. Then with a calm gesture I silenced it and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. A simple folding table, the only one I had. And now what? Megan asked. Now, I said, I am having a coffee. In my home. The sound that woke Derek was not my alarm or the doorbell. It was the dry, decisive click of my suitcases closing. I turned and saw him sitting up in bed, his hair disheveled, his face puffy with sleep, watching the scene with absolute incomprehension. Claire? What are you doing? He mumbled, his voice hoarse from sleep. His eyes went from me, fully dressed, to the two large suitcases by the bedroom door. I am leaving, I said. My voice came out calm, clear. There was no tremor, only certainty. He blinked slowly, as if his neurons refused to process the information. You are leaving? Where? Is it about yesterday, Claire? Please. That was a silly argument. We can. It is not about an argument, I interrupted, adjusting the strap of my bag on my shoulder. It is about everything. I am leaving Derek. For good. He got out of bed in his underwear. His tall frame now seemed vulnerable. Ridiculous. For good? Are you crazy? We have been married for 5 days. His tone was rising, a mix of disbelief and budding panic. 4, I corrected coldly. 4 days, and they have been more than enough. You cannot do this, he shouted, the sound tearing through the morning silence. We are husband and wife. This is insane. Where are you going to go? To your parents' house? To cry to your lawyer friend? I am going to my house, I said, and I felt a smile begin to form on my lips. It was a genuine light smile that came from a very deep place within me. This is your house, he roared, spreading his arms. Anger was beginning to overcome his confusion. No, Derek. This is your house, I replied, maintaining my calm. The house you wanted me to pay $2,000 a month for. Well, I have found lodging with better terms. What are you saying? He spat, taking a step closer. I did not flinch. Lodging? What, a hostel? Some shabby little place. The smile on my face widened. This was the moment. I took a deep breath, savoring the charged silence that preceded the revelation. Nothing like that. Something much more central, and with excellent views. I paused, looking him directly in the eye. Right across the street, in fact. His face went blank. Across the street? Yes. The stone building on the other side of the street. 3rd floor. Door on the right. Each word was a nail in the coffin. I bought it months ago, Derek. With my money. With the inheritance from my Aunt Lillian. It is furnished and in my name. Or rather, in the name of my company. A company you knew nothing about. I watched as understanding clawed its way through the fog of his anger. His eyes widened, then narrowed. He looked toward the window as if he could see through the walls. No. That is impossible. It is a lie. Why would you do that? Just in case, I said with a shrug. In case some Prince Charming turned out to be someone who saw a marriage as a transaction. Aunt Lillian was always very wise. You deceived me, he screamed, and now the anger was pure. You have been deceiving me for months. You are a liar. I deceived you? I repeated with a dry laugh. You are the one who asked me for rent 3 days after we got married. Now that is pure transparency. Of course. It was for us. It was for our future, he bellowed. His face was red. It was for your future, Derek. For your mortgage, your new car, your phantom life. Well, find another tenant. I am done paying. I grabbed the handle of the larger suitcase. The wheels squeaked against the hardwood floor. No, he yelled, and this time his voice was a desperate cry. He stood between me and the door. You are not leaving. It is not ending like this. We are husband and wife, for goodness sake. Not anymore, I said, and my voice dropped, becoming dangerously serene. Get out of the way, Derek. No, he gasped. I could see the panic in his eyes now. The panic of seeing his plan, his financial life raft, his decorative wife escape. Claire, please. I am sorry. The money thing was stupid, a dumb idea. I take it back. You do not have to pay anything. Let us forget it. Let us start over. His plea was pathetic. Seeing him on his emotional knees after so much arrogance should have made me feel pity. But I only felt disgust. Too late, I whispered. I do not trust you anymore. And I do not want to live with someone whose wallet I have to watch. Now move. Or I will call the police and tell them my husband is preventing me from leaving. With the legal folder I have, you will not like how that ends. The mention of the police and Megan, the lawyer, did the trick. His bluster deflated. The fear of a scandal, of his facade cracking in public, was stronger than his rage. With a hesitant step, he moved away from the door. I passed with my suitcases, dragging them down the hallway. He followed me like a ghost, repeating in a murmur, "You cannot do this, you cannot." In the entryway I stopped and turned one last time. There he stood in the middle of the luxurious, empty living room, in his underwear, his face a wreck. The perfect image of a fallen empire. "Goodbye, Derek," I said. And then I uttered the words I had been saving for weeks, the words that were my victory, my liberation, my sentence. I am done supporting anyone. I opened the front door. The cool air of the Saturday morning hit my face. It was the air of freedom. "Claire, wait!" was the last cry I heard, muffled by the sound of the door closing behind me. I did not look back. I went down the stairs, the suitcases making a dull thud against the steps. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with pure exultant adrenaline. When I stepped out onto the street, the morning sun blinded me for a moment. Right across the way, at the door of the other building, I saw Megan leaning against her car, her arms crossed and a satisfied smile on her face. She crossed the street and helped me with the heavier suitcase. We said nothing. There was no need. We walked together the few meters to the entrance of my new home. As I crossed the threshold, an absolute peace washed over me. The sound of the lock turning behind me was the sweetest sound I had ever heard in my life. Megan dropped the suitcase on the lobby floor and hugged me tightly. "You did it," she whispered in my ear. "Oh my God, Claire, you did it." I let her hug me, laughing, and I realized I had tears in my eyes. They were not tears of sadness. They were of relief, of an immense weight evaporating. From the entrance, I looked toward the other side of the street. In a third-floor window, the small, dark figure of Derek stood motionless, watching us. I could not see his expression, but his slumped posture said it all. Megan followed my gaze. "He looks like someone who just lost everything," she commented without a trace of compassion. "He is," I said, turning and heading up the stairs to my apartment. And his ship just sank. When I opened the door to my home, light poured in through the windows, illuminating golden dust motes in the air. The space was empty, yes, but it was full of silence, of peace, of the future. "And now what?" Megan asked, dropping the keys on the newly scrubbed marble floor. "Now," I smiled. "I am going to unpack my bags. In my home." The door to my new apartment closed with a solid, satisfying sound. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with morning light, space, and possibilities. I dropped my purse to the floor. Megan whistled, looking around. "Wow, Claire. Now this is a place." Aunt Lillian had a great eye. It was true. The living room was spacious, with high ceilings and old moldings. The enormous windows looked out onto the back Bay Street. It was empty, save for a few boxes and my suitcases piled in a corner, but the potential was palpable. "It was a find," I said, walking to the center of the room. My footsteps echoed on the parquet floor. The heirs of an old diplomat were selling it. They wanted a quick sale. I got a good price. "And right across from him," Megan said, walking to the window, From there, the facade of Derek's building was perfectly visible. A clear view of a closed chapter. It is not about looking back, I corrected, though a smile escaped my lips. It is about moving forward on my own terms. Just then, a figure appeared in a third-floor window across the street. Derek, his face pale and distraught, was pressed against the glass, looking directly at us. He had seen us. Megan pointed. Look. I raised my hand and gave him a little finger wave. A small calm gesture. The figure on the other side took a step back, disappearing from view. Well, Megan sighed, stepping away from the window. Round 1 is over. And now what? Now I live, I said, determined. Help me bring the rest of my stuff up from the car? We spent the next hour going up and down. Besides the suitcases, Megan had brought some basic supplies in her car. A new coffee maker, some mugs, an air fryer, and a chilled bottle of champagne. To celebrate, she said, setting the bottle on one of the boxes, even if it is 11 in the morning. We were sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, drinking champagne from plastic cups when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Derek's name. Megan raised an eyebrow. Are you answering? Not a chance, I said, letting it ring. It stopped. It rang again and then again. Finally, I turned the phone face down. I need to change my number. Wait, Megan advised. Save the messages. The missed calls could be useful for the divorce petition. Proof of continued contact. The phone vibrated with a message. Then another and another. Claire, please talk to me. This is insane. Come back. Let us talk. You are in that apartment. It is true. Answer me. You cannot do this to me. We are husband and wife. I ignored them. The champagne tasted of freedom, effervescent and sharp. You will have to notify him that you are here, Megan said in a practical tone. Legally, for the divorce due to irreconcilable differences, we need to establish separate residences. I will send a certified letter to his office. Cold formal. That will go over wonderfully. Do it. The idea of an official letter addressed to Mr. Derek Thompson at his luxurious office gave me a wave of satisfaction. Megan left at noon, promising to return the next day with more provisions and the first drafts of the petition. She left me alone for the first time in what felt like an eternity. I was completely alone. In my space. I walked through the rooms. 3 bedrooms, one I would use as a study. A full bathroom and a powder room. A bright separate kitchen. The living room with its windows to the world. I stopped in front of them. The back Bay Street was bustling with Saturday life. People with shopping bags, tourists. The constant hum of Boston. And there, on the other side, was the apartment I had shared with Derek. The Golden Cage. From here I could see part of the living room, the marble table where the conversation had taken place. A strange sense of power washed over me. I could see, but he could not reach me. The intercom buzzed, a harsh sound that made me jump. I approached it cautiously. On the blurry screen I saw Derek's figure. He looked haggard, his usually perfect hair a mess. Claire, I know you are there. Open up. We need to talk. I pressed the microphone button. My voice sounded cold and metallic through the speaker. We have nothing to talk about, Derek. Go away. I am not leaving. This is a farce. Open this door. His voice was a distorted shout. If you do not leave, I am calling the police, I said calmly. And then I am calling a business publication. I wonder what your partners will think of the story about the executive who charged his wife rent. There was a silence, then a dull thud, as if he had kicked the front door of the building. You are unbelievable. And you crossed a line, I replied and cut the connection. I stood there trembling, leaning against the wall. The direct confrontation through an intercom was different, more visceral. I took a deep breath. I would not let him break me. I had crossed a point of no return. The afternoon passed in a strange calm. I unpacked one of the suitcases. I hung my clothes in an empty closet. The simple act of hanging my dresses in my closet, without asking, without anyone commenting on the space, was profoundly therapeutic. I made a simple dinner with what Megan had brought. Scrambled eggs, eaten on the living room floor, watching dusk fall over Boston. The city lit up and with it the windows across the street. In Derek's living room, the light flickered on and off several times. I imagined him pacing, furious, bewildered. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I answered it. Claire. It is your mother. Her voice sounded worried. Derek called me. He is very upset. He says you have left, that you have had a difficult time. What is going on, honey? I closed my eyes. Of course he had played that card. Mom, I am perfectly fine, I said in the calmest voice I could. I have not had any breakdown. Derek was not honest with you. I will explain everything, but not right now. I am safe. I am at my house. Your house? What house? You are at Derek's apartment. I have an apartment, Mom. I bought it a while ago. I am here. I am fine. Derek and I are over. It is final. There was a silence on the other end. Then a sigh. Oh my God, Claire. Why did not you tell us anything? Because I could not risk it getting out. It was something I had to do alone. But now it is done. I promise I will call you tomorrow and tell you everything in detail. My mother, ever practical, processed the information. Are you sure you are okay? Do you need anything? Should I come over? I am fine, Mom. Really. I have Megan with me. And I need a little time. After hanging up, I felt lighter. My family knew. The first circle of support was activated. Night fell completely. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the floor by the window. In the apartment across the street, Derek seemed to have calmed down. The lights were off. Maybe he had gone out. Maybe he was sitting alone in the dark. I looked at my reflection in the glass. A woman with her hair up, no makeup, sitting on the floor of an empty apartment. And for the first time in a long time, I liked what I saw. There was decision in that gaze. Firmness. The phone rang one last time. It was a message from an unknown number, but I recognized the writing style. Claire, we cannot end like this. I love you. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Please let me see you. Let me explain. I read it once. Then, with a steady finger, I blocked the number. There was no explanation that would suffice. There was no love that could justify the calculation, the condescension, the idea that I was an asset that should pay dividends. I turned off the phone. The silence of the apartment enveloped me. It was a silence full of echoes, but they were my echoes. My thoughts, my plans, my future. Tomorrow Megan would bring the divorce papers. Tomorrow I would start looking for furniture for this living room. Tomorrow would be the first official day of my new life. But tonight, this first night, was just mine. Nobody else's. No debts, no expectations. Without the shadow of a man calculating my value in dollars per square foot. I lay down on the air mattress that Megan had also had the foresight to bring. Wrapped in a blanket. Through the window, the stars were dim from the city lights, but they were there. I smiled in the darkness. The new keys, cold and sharp, were on the cardboard box that served as a nightstand. The sound of freedom, I realized, was the metallic jingle of keys that only opened your own door. The next morning arrived with a cold, clear sun that poured through my curtainless windows. The whistle of the kettle was my alarm clock. I sat on the kitchen floor, a blanket over my shoulders, and contemplated my new world. The apartment was in chaos, boxes to be opened, half-empty suitcases, but the chaos was mine, and that made it beautiful. Megan arrived on time as always, laden with a bag of fresh pastries and a brown folder under her arm. Fuel for the neurons, she announced, leaving the pastries on a box, and ammunition for the process. She placed the folder in front of me. They were the papers. The divorce petition. The words uncontested proceeding stood out on the cover. Uncontested. I read aloud with a crooked smile. He does not seem very agreeable. Legally, the irreconcilable differences and the unilateral will of one spouse are enough, Megan said, flipping through pages. With the prenup you signed, it is even faster. Complete separation of assets. What is yours, what is his. And what you bought before the marriage. Untouchable. You sign here, here, and here. I took the pen she offered me. There was no hesitation. I signed my name with a firm stroke on the dotted lines. Claire Bennett. No more Thompson ever again. And now? I asked, handing her the papers. Now I take them to the courthouse. And Derek is served. By certified mail to his office. He has 10 days to respond. If he does not, the proceedings continue anyway. And he will not. You are that sure? Megan bit into a pastry. He is cornered. If he contests it, he would have to explain in court why he asked his wife for rent 3 days after getting married. His pride will not allow it. Besides, his biggest fear is a scandal. He will prefer this to disappear as quietly as possible. She was right. The following days proved it. There were no more desperate calls. No more appearances at my door. Only silence. A silence from across the street that was more eloquent than any shout. A week later, however, the first legal volley arrived. A formal notice addressed to me, but sent by Derek's law firm. It was not a response to the petition, but an extrajudicial claim. It alleged damages for unjustified abandonment of the marital home and demanded financial compensation for expenses derived from the abrupt cancellation of the Common Life project. Megan laughed when I showed it to her. It is a typical tactic. Trying to scare you. It has no basis. But we are going to respond, and we are going to do it right. Her response was a masterpiece of legal precision. It listed, point by point, Derek's request for the $2,000, cited the prenup, and counterattacked by demanding payment for half the wedding expenses, which I had fronted, plus an invoice for the furniture and personal belongings I had left in his apartment and that he was now using. She attached as evidence the spreadsheet where my name appeared as contribution C. We hit him where it hurts, Megan said, sealing the envelope. In his wallet and in his ego. You will see, he will shut up. And so he did. There were no more formal notices. The silence returned. The divorce process continued its course, slow but unstoppable, like a heavy ship sailing toward an inevitable port. Meanwhile, my life began to take shape. I went to IKEA and bought a large terracotta-colored sofa, a solid wood dining table, a floor lamp that projected stars on the ceiling. Every piece was my choice. Without consulting anyone, without justifying myself. I started having visitors. First, my parents. My mother cried when she saw me, but they were tears of contained frustration, not sadness. My father, a man of few words, gave me a long hug and murmured, "We are here for whatever you need." They toured the apartment, nodding in approval. "It is yours," my mother said firmly. "And it is beautiful." Then my friends came. One evening we filled the empty living room with blankets and cushions, ordered pizza, and shared bottles of wine. It was not a party to celebrate the divorce, as Megan said, but to celebrate my new beginning. Laughter filled the rooms, chasing away the last echoes of silence. One night from my window, I saw a for sale sign hanging on Derek's balcony. I smiled. The golden cage no longer had a songbird to finance it. The day the divorce was final, I received the certified mail, a brown envelope with the court seal. I opened it with steady hands. There it was, the decree dissolving the marriage bond, effective that same day. I did not feel overwhelming joy. I felt a deep relief, like the kind you experience when you take off a dress that is too tight after many hours. I could breathe. Megan came that evening. She brought a bottle of champagne. To reclaim singlehood, she toasted. To reclaimed freedom, I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. We drank, looking out the window. The for sale sign was still hanging, swaying slightly in the wind. And now what? Megan asked, as she had on the first day. Now I live, I said. Seriously this time. I will focus on my work, maybe travel, learn to be with myself without anyone putting a price on me. Sounds good, she smiled. And love. Love, nothing for now. I cut her off, but with a smile. First, I want to remember what it feels like to be just me, without anyone's last name attached. Months passed. The apartment across the street sold. One day I saw a young family moving in furniture, a couple with a small child. I was happy. Those walls needed new laughter. Real connection. I changed too. My work as a graphic designer flourished without the pressure of Derek's disparaging comments about my designs. I took on riskier, more personal projects. I won a local award. The money that was once destined for an absurd payment, I now invested in an advanced digital illustration course. One autumn afternoon, almost a year after my escape, I was leaving my building with a shopping cart. On the other side of the street, Next to a taxi loaded with suitcases, I saw Derek. His back was to me, giving instructions to the driver. He was leaving, probably for a smaller apartment as rumored. He turned as if sensing my gaze. Our eyes met for an instant. He looked older, more worn. The arrogance had vanished from his shoulders, replaced by a weary posture. I did not smile. I did not frown. I just looked at him with the same tranquility with which one observes a familiar but distant landscape. He looked down first, got into the taxi, and it drove away. I did not feel triumph. I felt distance, as if I were watching a scene from a movie I had seen a long time ago, one that no longer moved me. I went up to my apartment, unloaded the groceries, put a kettle on to boil. I sat on my terracotta sofa with the blanket my grandmother had woven over my legs. The silence was warm, welcoming. Mine. I looked around. The shelves were full of my books, the walls with my drawings and photographs. In the kitchen, the pots and pans were the ones I liked. Everything down to the last detail bore my mark. I smiled. The smile of someone who has weathered a storm and found not just a shelter, but an entire harbor for herself alone. The intercom buzzed. It was the mailman with a package, a book I had ordered on sustainable architecture. I opened it, smelled the new paper, and sat down to flip through it. Outside, the life of Boston continued its course. The cars, the people, the constant hum of the city. In here, in my newly conquered fortress of peace, the only sounds were the soft turning of pages and the whisper of the boiling kettle. It had been a short journey in distance, just one street, but infinite in meaning. I had left a house to enter a home. I had stopped being a tenant in someone else's life to become the absolute owner of my own. And the best part of all, I thought, looking at the reflection of my smile in the dark window, was that I was the only one paying the rent on this happiness. And the currency was not dollars but courage, patience, and the sweet, unbeatable certainty of freedom. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.